Alrighty, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the March Life Unites Us webinar, Police's Partners in Addressing Substance Use Disorder, the Second Chance PA Program. My name's Erica Saylor, and I'm going to be helping to host the webinar today. So today we'll go over a few Zoom items, some information about Life Unites Us. I will introduce our speaker and he will give his presentation. We will have time for question and answer, and then we will close out for the day. If you do have questions you would like to ask about Life Unites Us or our presenter, please put them in the Q&A feature and not in the chat. It's just a little bit easier for us to go through questions when they're in that format. If for any reason you get disconnected from Zoom, please retry the original link and you should be let back in. If for any reason you're unable to finish the webinar with us today, it will be posted on the Life Unites Us data dashboard for public viewing probably sometime tomorrow. So for our friends on the call today that aren't familiar with Life Unites Us is a project developed to reduce stigma around opioid use disorder. This is done by using a people-forward approach that aims to connect individuals through stories. Through research and practice in anti-stigma work, we have found that connecting people through their stories and similarities can and will reduce stigma. In order to do this, the team records stories of community members across Pennsylvania, stories of both personal recovery as well as an ally to someone in recovery. Short stories are then produced and featured on the Life Unites Us website and social media. The intent is that by sharing stories of hope and resiliency, we can prove that recovery is probable, reducing stigma makes recovery more likely, addiction is treatable, those living with an addiction are just like everyone else, and those living with opioid use disorder are so much more than their disease. As I mentioned in the last slide, this campaign can be found online. The website features a library of resources that are shared across social media platforms. The Life Unites Us website is www.lifeunitesus.com. The campaign works alongside a variety of local partners to bring it to life. The aim is to provide a platform for voices from communities across Pennsylvania as a resource and to add to the work that so many of you are already doing to end stigma. The great news about Life Unites Us is that you can join us in ending stigma by following and sharing the campaign. If you are part of a larger organization or effort, we would love to invite you to become a partner with Life Unites Us. Partners of the campaign will have the opportunity to help recruit stories and share stories to and from your community. As a partner, you can have your logo included on our website. You'll receive curated campaign videos tailored to your community and offerings, be invited to attend our webinars and trainings, get access to exclusive partner resources, have input on what types of trainings and webinars we do next. If you are interested in becoming a partner, you can complete the partner form on our Life Unites Us page, or you can email Ashley, whose contact is listed below, or the general Life Unites Us email, which is info@lifeunitesus.com. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Chief Ed Cunningham. Chief Cunningham began his career with the Elizabethtown Police Department in January of 2018. A 30-year veteran of law enforcement, Chief Cunningham spent almost 23 years patrolling the streets of Pittsburgh before being hired to lead the Elizabethtown Police Department. A third-generation police officer, Chief Cunningham has always had a passion for community engagement and public service. During his time working in urban law enforcement, Chief Cunningham has always had a passion to drive advancements and improvement in the profession that he loves, and has used every one of his past assignments as a learning experience to fuel both his personal and professional advancement. Chief Cunningham retired from the Pittsburgh Police in January 2018 to assume his leadership role at Elizabethtown, where he's in charge of a department of 18 young active police officers. Leading Elizabethtown Police Department has allowed Chief Cunningham to focus his efforts on pushing further advancements in the profession he loves, strengthening the department's community-focused policing initiatives, and modernizing many of the department's processes. He is very proud of the SecondChancePA Program, which is a first of its kind pre-arrest diversionary program that partners law enforcement and other emergency services with service providers to get people who are living with addiction the help that they need without further involvement with the criminal justice system. Chief Cunningham lives in Elizabethtown with his wife and dogs, and he's an active member of the Rotary Club, the Lancaster County Reentry Coalition, and several police chiefs associations and his church. It's my pleasure now to turn it over to Ed. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for the introduction, Erica, and thank you for the kind words. As Erica mentioned, I am Chief Ed Cunningham from the Elizabethtown Borough Police Department, and I am extremely proud of the Second Chance PA program that we started here in Elizabethtown. What is our big idea? Basically, and I'll get into how the program started in a second here, but we decided that it's really important to find a way to address the number of overdose deaths that we're seeing in our community and to reduce the amount of substance use related crime in our community. However, at the same time, we also wanted to reduce the impact of substance use disorder in our community and get the people that we serve into recovery, into treatment, rather than pushing them further into the criminal justice system. Like Erica said, when I came here in January of 2018, one of the things that I had to do just as a new police chief was to meet the business owners in our town. I was very lucky that Chris Dreisbach and Ben McCoy were the owners of a business, an addiction recovery business here in Elizabethtown, the Blueprints for Addiction Recovery. I went to meet with them expecting to have a 15-minute or 20-minute just meeting from police chief to business owner. And as we started talking, we started to realize that we both had a lot of the same passions. And that 15-minute meeting turned into a 2 or 3 hour get together where we really were just talking about everything that we've seen in our life and in our professions, and how substance use and abuse is really destroying our communities. And we were able to come to some common ground and to really come to some agreements about the fact that we both had a passion for helping people, although we had different routes of providing that help. And we both knew that we needed to find a better way to do things. So how was the Second Chance PA program born? When I was hired as police chief, one of the mandates that was given to me by my bosses, by Borough Council and the mayor, was that I had to address the opioid overdose crisis. Being hired in January of 18, that was right at really the peak of the overdose deaths and the opioid crisis here in Lancaster County. And so there were a few things, as we were talking, there were a few things that we really knew. And one of them is that police officers are often the first responders to overdose calls. When a person calls 911, the police are usually the closest and can get there the fastest. We had just, within the last couple of years, started carrying and administering naloxone or Narcan in our police cars. And that was helping us to bring down the number of deaths, but it really wasn't doing anything to solve the problem. Because once the overdose was reversed, we often had no means to direct people towards help. We didn't, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but we really didn't have anything to offer to these people that we were trying to help if they didn't choose to go to the hospital. So as we were talking, as Chris and Ben and I were talking, we realized that one of the things we needed to do was to prioritize treatment and prioritize getting people towards the help that they need. We all agreed that the criminal justice system was not the optimal place to recover from substance addiction. That we all agreed that treatment would benefit the person as well as the community, because getting the person back on the right path and and helping them to address that addiction would definitely make them stand in a better place in the community. And we also all agreed, although from different points of view, that everything that we've always done has failed or has only been marginally successful. So we decided we needed to find a better way, and we needed to work together to make that happen. But again, also as a police officer and as a police chief, preventing crime is one of the things that's part of my job. And I knew from my years of experience that the majority of all criminal activity in our community generally has some sort of a connection to substance use or substance abuse. That substance use and abuse represents a major impact on the quality of life in our community. And I also knew, though, that people who were affected by substance use often commit their crimes simply to support their addiction. They're not bad people. They're just people who have a problem and do bad things because it's the only way they know how to survive. So how did we build the program? Initially, it started with just the three of us trying to build a program that would actually work. Like I said, we knew that everything that we've always tried has failed. So we had to try to figure out something new. We had to try to figure out something new, a new way to address the problem. So we started doing a lot of research. I printed out hundreds of pages of information. I was constantly looking at websites and calling other police departments from other programs across the country, including Washington State, Oregon, Massachusetts, New York, and 2 or 3 other programs here in Pennsylvania, to try to find examples of ways that other communities were building these programs. I even sent a couple of our patrol officers to Boston to attend a law enforcement assisted diversion conference and bring back all of the information that they could find from there. Any best practices they could find, any anecdotes that they could find, bring back as much as they could. From there, I worked with the district attorney's office. I also worked with the judge who was in charge of the Lancaster County Drug Court, who is now our president judge in the court system. And I also worked with our local district magistrate's offices. I wanted to make sure that the program we were putting together would be a legally sound and legally stable program, and that we weren't going to be creating more problems for the people that we were trying to help. The biggest thing, though, was that we constructed the program from pieces of all of the others, using parts that we thought would be effective, throwing away the parts that we didn't think would be effective, and creating something new in the areas where there were then holes in the program. Basically, what I did was I stole from everybody I could find, and I looked at it and I said, okay, this will work. I like this idea. This won't work. That'll never work here. So, and I just went through, and then we pieced it all together to come up with what would eventually become the Second Chance PA program. Obviously, I'm biased. You know, Dad is always biased of his programs. But some of the things that make our program better than any of the others that I can find are, number one, the training. When we bring a police department on board with this program, we provide training for the police officers as the department joins the program. We train the officers about 3 major aspects of the program. And that's the construction and operation. Basically, how did it come about, and how does the program actually work? The second is the brain science of addiction, and third is the continuum of care. I'll get into this a little bit more later towards the end, but those the second and third parts are very important. You notice that, you know, the pictures of Ben and Chris, all of the training classes that we do are the 3 of us putting that together. I talk about the construction and operation of the program. So I can tell, I tell the officers how it was born, how we put it together, and how it will functionally work on the street. Ben is our resident genius. He talks about the brain science of addiction. He teaches the officers how the substance of abuse will actually hijack the brain waves and hijack the activity of the brain and make it so that a person who is living with substance use disorder would actually prioritize drugs over food, water, sleep, and almost over anything but air. One of the very powerful analogies that seems to always connect with the officers when we're doing that training is he talks about how once the substance has taken over and hijacked the brain, it's sort of like it's sort of like if you put a bag over top of your head. If you put a bag over your head and you can't breathe, you're not going to sit down and have a logical discussion about how long you're going to allow the bag to stay on your head, how long you're going to wait until you try to take the bag off. You're just going to start ripping at that bag trying to get it off. Well, it's the same thing with the substances of abuse. Once they've hijacked the brain, they make the brain believe that that bag is on their head. And so the person who's living with substance use disorder is not making a rational decision as to whether they're going to commit a crime to feed the habit. They're just trying to survive, because it's either get drugs or die in the way that their brain is operating. The other big thing during that portion that he teaches the officers is that when you do a proper recovery program, it's not an attempt to get around responsibility, but it actually makes responsibility a central core of that recovery. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And then the third part is the continuum of care, where Chris then gets up and he tells the officers about how the old Sandra Bullock movie of 28 days in a country club and boom, you're cured is not really realistic. And so he goes through the different steps of the continuum of care and how a person who really is committed to recovery is going to take anywhere between 2 to 3 to 4 years to really get into that long-term recovery spot. Then as the final part of that training, Chris then shares his own experiences as a person who's living in long-term recovery himself. He shares his own experiences and shares what happened to him when his brain was hijacked by substances of abuse and how he was affected by making those poor choices. So then the next thing that makes our program better is the fact that we are available 24/7, 365. Anytime that an officer calls the Second Chance program, they're going to speak to a live human, someone who is ready, willing, and help them to offer the treatment that that person needs the most in the moment when that person needs it the most. We're not having them leave a message. We're not having a follow-up call. We're not having anything. We talk to the officer, will talk to a live person right now and start getting that the person that they're dealing with on the road to recovery. Then one of the other most important things that makes it good is the fact that we use the certified recovery specialists. Second Chance PA phone number is answered by a certified recovery specialist who will be able to help the officer with the case. So for anybody who's not familiar with the certified recovery specialist or the CRS, they are a specially trained individual who's available to help the officers 24/7. These individuals are trained to navigate the minefields and the mazes and provide the assistance that's needed in the moment, at the moment, where that person needs it. The CRS is trained to understand insurance coverage, to understand the continuum of care, to understand the availability of care. Where will we be able to find a bed? Where will we be able to find a placement for this person to get them the help that they need? These are all the things when you hear talking about reforming police, one of the things that a lot of us will talk about is the fact that police officers are often forced to do things that we're not trained to do. And this is one of those instances. There's no way that I or my officers could ever understand all of the intricacies of health insurance coverage, or we know a little bit about the continuum of care, but making the evaluation to figure out where exactly this person falls on that continuum, we don't have the training to do that. And we definitely don't know where all of the treatment centers and all of the open beds and things are. So having this CRS available to us gives us the ability to really get that person what they need right now when they need it. But here's the most important thing that really helps us with using that CRS is that in order to get this certification, these people are in recovery themselves. So they're able to make a peer-to-peer connection that no police officer is ever going to be able to make with a person who's living with substance use disorder. A person who's addicted to drugs is never going to believe that a cop knows what they're going through, because I've never been addicted to heroin. I've never spent time in jail. I can understand the story you're telling me, but I can never really understand the shoes that you're walking in. The CRS is able to come in and really help us to de-escalate situations, because they can make that peer-to-peer, person-to-person connection that I never would be able to make. And they can get these people to really agree to go into treatment, where coming from the police officer, it may feel more like a forced situation. So what happens when an officer calls the Second Chance PA program? When a police officer comes into contact with a person who they either suspect or confirm to be living with a substance use problem, that could be in an enforcement encounter. We either encounter them on a traffic stop, or we encounter them in the borough park, or we encounter them walking down the street, whatever it is, that enforcement encounter, we come into contact with somebody that way. Or it might be on an overdose call. We respond to 911 for the overdose, we deliver the Narcan, the medics are there, and we come into contact that way. Or we may have them walk in at the police station. One of the things that all of the police departments who have signed on to this program have agreed to do is to make our police department a safe place, where a person who is living with substance use disorder, a person who needs and wants to get treatment for their problem, can walk into the police station, say, hey, I need help. And we can call Second Chance and get the CRS working right then. It actually happens more often than you would think. It happened here in Elizabethtown just about 2 weeks ago when we were doing some training. Right in the middle of doing a training session, I got a text message that somebody had walked into our police station and said, hey, I heard about this program, can you get me help? Once the officer comes into contact, they call the Second Chance hotline number, and they have an initial evaluation by the CRS in conjunction with the officer. Basically, what the CRS is going to ask is, what are the facts of the case? What do you have? What do you suspect the person is addicted to or is using? And what are the charges that they're facing? Something like that. But really, there's only 2 qualifications to be helped by the Second Chance program. The only 2 qualifications are that you have to be a living, breathing human being, and that you have to be willing to talk to the CRS. Aside from that, the CRS will do the evaluation, find out where you need, what you need, and figure out how to make it happen. There's no cost, there's no monetary obligation at all. The police officer doesn't even have to worry about insurance coverage or anything. The CRS will work all that out later. As long as you're alive and willing to at least talk to the CRS, that's all that matters for the officer to make the call. This is another one of the things that really makes our program better than most of the others, is that the CRS then responds to the scene or an agreed upon location to take over responsibility for the person that we're dealing with. Most other programs throughout the country have a phone number that the officer can call, make some sort of a connection, and then someone will follow up with that individual at a later time or date. I don't know of another program anywhere else in the country that has 24/7, 365 in the field response by a recovery specialist or by someone who is able to help. With having that ability to have somebody actually come to the scene, that frees up the officer to do other things. And that also avoids having second thoughts or cold feet about heading into treatment. So once the CRS gets there, they can navigate the insurance, the continuum of care, the appropriate location of care. Like I said, all those things that a cop can't really know everything that there is to know about it. And the CRS will then take responsibility for that person's care and will transport the person as appropriate. The police officer doesn't have to worry about finding a place for the person, for the individual to go, and the officer doesn't have to worry about taking them to that location. If because it's an overdose or some other situation, the person is going to the hospital, the CRS will meet us at the hospital. If it's safe, or if it's not safe in the location, or if it's too cold, or if it's raining, the CRS will meet us at the police station. Whatever it is, the CRS will come out 24 hours a day to meet us where we are and to take over the care of that person. As part of the Second Chance program, the CRS then obtains an informed consent forms that allow them to keep the officers informed to whatever extent the officer or their department needs about the person's journey through treatment. There are some officers who simply only want to know that the person made it to detox and that they're in the right direction, and that's good enough for them. Some of the other departments have, some of the other departments are a little stricter. They want 2 weeks of follow-up or 30 days worth of follow-up. In order to participate in the program, and it's a voluntary program, so in order to participate, the individual gives the CRS the ability to let the police officer know basically status and status updates. We're obviously not getting deep into the weeds of their treatment, deep into the details of their therapy. We just want to know, are they still continuing in the program, and are they doing well? That's all we need to know. Honestly, looking at it from a law enforcement point of view, we now, in 2022, police officers have to write reports on everything that we do. So we write a report to document the interaction. We take whatever contraband they may have and put it into evidence for destruction. And then as long as the CRS feels that it's safe to be with this person, our officers can get back to patrol and get back to doing the other things that they need to be doing, because the CRS has taken over responsibility for this individual's care and will take care of them from here. So I know that I'm safe leaving them with the CRS, that they're not going to run into some sort of a medical issue or something later where I would end up wishing that I had done more. Then this is another big piece. We give the officers the discretion, and we give them the ability to choose not to file criminal charges and allow the person to go into treatment rather than going further into the criminal justice system. So we allow them to do the treatment and to get better rather than stacking more criminal charges on them. Let them get treatment instead of getting into trouble. So the three major goals of the Second Chance PA program is, again, number one, to provide treatment. We've all agreed that the criminal justice system is an inefficient at best way to get a person the substance use treatment that is needed. The other goal is, again, to prevent crime. Because most substance-related crimes are committed simply to support the addiction and not out of some evilness in the person, providing treatment will undoubtedly reduce the amount of crime in the community. And then most importantly, or not most importantly, because saving lives is number one and providing treatment is number one, But very important, and the part that I'm really excited about, is smashing the stigma that exists between police officers and people who are living with addiction. One of the things that Chris talks about is the fact that he finds that a lot of times people who are living with addiction hate police officers simply because that's what they've been taught to do. They've been taught to hate the police officers. And really the biggest problem that we have with each other is that I have a job that interferes with them getting the drugs that their brain needs to survive. So once we realize through this program that we can get rid of the stigma and we can actually start getting people help, that is a phenomenal thing. So how do we do that? What does Second Chance do to help address and eliminate the stigma? Again, is that training. The training that's provided to the police officer speaks about the brain science of addiction. I was talking about how Ben describes to us how the three different sections of the brain stem controls the breathing and the heartbeat and things. And then there's the limbic system that controls the survival, the fight or flight, and controls the things that we need to do just to survive. And then there's the cerebral cortex, or the frontal lobe, which is the reasoning and the thinking and the arts and the education and stuff like that. And Ben explains to us how the drugs of abuse will hijack the limbic system and make it so that the limbic system, the desire to survive, is always in the driver's seat. And it's making that person who, when you catch them when they're not in that craving stage, they'll agree with you that they need to stop using drugs. They'll agree with us that what they're doing is wrong and that they shouldn't be doing it. But when they fall into the grips of the addiction, when they fall into the grips of the craving, again, it's like having that bag over their head, and they're going to claw at the bag and do whatever they need to get the substance that their brain believes that is more important than food or water or air. What we're finding through the training is that when the officers understand how the brain reacts to the substances of abuse, they're more likely to use the Second Chance program and navigate people towards treatment instead of further into the criminal justice system. One of the things I talk about when I'm doing the training is that, hopefully you've heard the saying, but there's an old saying out there that says that when the only tool you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. Well, up until this point, the police only had two tools to deal with somebody who was living with addiction. We had ambulances and handcuffs. If we couldn't get somebody to voluntarily go to the hospital, and we didn't have enough to force them to go to the hospital, then the only other choices that we had were either to shake their hands and walk away and say, I hope you don't die, or to arrest them, put them in jail, let them go through the worst detox experience that anyone could ever imagine, and hope that they live long enough to make it to the preliminary hearing so that the judge could force them to go to treatment. Because the judges had the ability to force them into treatment, but police did not have the ability to do that. So once we have that training, and once the officers understand that we're now putting another tool into their toolbox and giving them another way to help our community, they're definitely much more willing and likely to use the services of the program. The other thing that we do is community education. We speak about and publicize the Second Chance program every chance we get. We have relationships with the media outlets, and we use social media to get our story out. It's funny because it's a big difference from when I was in Pittsburgh, but now I've never met a microphone that I didn't like. Any chance I get to publicize the Second Chance program, to do a story in the newspaper, to talk to the Rotary or the Lions Club or at the library. Whenever I get a chance to talk about Second Chance, I talk about Second Chance, because we do really heavily emphasize the that walk-in portion, where it's a community resource. And if somebody needs to get help for a second chance, or through the Second Chance program, they can call us and we will do everything that we can to help. And then this is one of the coolest parts. We just started this. It actually started right before COVID, and it got slowed down during COVID, but we're back to doing it again. And it's what we call the police groups. We go in about every 6 weeks, and we have 2, maybe 3 fully uniformed police officers, often including at least one police chief, joining group therapy sessions to speak to persons who are in recovery. The joint groups, the group sessions have usually 40 or 50 people in them who are all at different points in their recovery journey. And we go in and we have honest, open, and frank conversations. We let them take a little peek behind the curtain, so to speak, and to see us as people. And one of the things that it does for the officers is it allows the officers to recognize and to reinforce from the training that we've given them that people who are living with addiction are simply people who have a brain disease and who are trying the best that they can to deal with that. But it also allows people who are in recovery to recognize, often for the first time in their life, that the police are helpers, that we're not their enemy. We're just people who have jobs that occasionally interfere with their addiction. When we go in there, when I go in, I talk about my the struggles in the past that I've had with alcohol. I talk about my family life. I talk about my dogs. Oftentimes I'll show pictures of my dogs. I talk about how I was growing up, and we really personalize it. And then the other thing is we have like a Q&A session during that time also, where we allow, I always tell the folks who were in the group, I said, other than I'm not going to speak, unless I was the one who arrested you, I'm not going to speak to your particular criminal case because I don't know all of the facts and I'm not going to pass judgment on a 30-second story. But aside from that, I'll answer any question that you have. You know, I open up, I talk about my bumps and bruises. I talk about my mistakes very openly and honestly. And I talk about the things that I know that our profession can do better, so that we can really make a connection. Because what I always tell them is, you know, I congratulate them for the fact that they are in recovery themselves. But I know that every single person in that room knows somebody who is still using. And so what I say is, I know that at the end of an hour and a half, we're not going to walk out of here as BFFs. But on the other hand, if you say, maybe I don't trust all cops, but Ed is pretty cool, so I'm going to call my friend who I know is still using and say, hey, if you go up to E-Town and talk to Ed, they have this program and he's going to get you help and he's going to get you start in the right direction towards treatment and recovery. So if we can make that connection, even just, you know, for whatever, if we can save one more life by me talking about some of my mistakes and my problems, it's well worth it to me. And this is, the police groups are really a cool experience, and we really enjoy doing them. So where are we going from here? Second Chance PA officially launched on January 1st, 2019 with 2 police departments and 1 ambulance service. We had the Elizabethtown Police Department, the Northwest Regional Police Department, and the Susquehanna Valley Ambulance Service. That was it. We had a total of about 40 cops who were participating, and we and a few medics, and we were just trying to make it work, trying to live through the bumps and bruises, figure out all of the operational difficulties, and really start to get some successes. Since January of 2019, we've now expanded to every police department in Lancaster County and 1 department in York County. And we're affiliated with all 3 major ambulance services here in Lancaster County. We also work with the Lancaster County Probation and Parole Office and the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office, so that we're starting to find more and more ways to connect with folks wherever they are and wherever they need our services. Connect with them where they need us and start to get them the help. We also have meetings set up, and we have things in progress to move to York County, Dauphin County, Berks County, Lackawanna County. We're also I'm working very hard with the warden for the Lancaster County Prison to try to get us in there and start to provide services while the folks are in prison, so that we can, when they come out of jail, we can pick them up, get them to treatment, and stop people from overdosing immediately when they get out of jail, so that we can really get people heading in the direction and get them into the treatment that they need. A few other really cool things is we've presented to the Pennsylvania State Law Enforcement Citizens Advisory Commission. So we found some people who have the ear of the governor, and we're starting to get some movement towards getting recognized by the governor's office. And we also had a productive meeting with the Pennsylvania State Police. I'm working with their Office of Community Engagement to find out a way to bring the training in the first step, and then bring the whole program to all of the troopers who serve in PSP. Obviously, growing from 20 some police departments in Lancaster County to 86 barracks for the state police, we don't want to jump there too fast, because we don't want to destroy the program by trying to grow it. But we are really starting to work to grow and enhance and move this into helping more people in more areas of the state. And then I'm really excited about the fact that we've partnered with the Pollock Center for Addiction Outreach and Research from Penn State University and the School of Public Safety from Elizabethtown College to do some academic research. Because obviously, we started out, this was a self-funded project run by one of our partners, by Blueprints. We were able to get a little bit of grant funding. We've been able to now progress to the point where Lancaster County is supporting this program and making sure that all of the police officers in Lancaster County have access to this program, but trying to scale it to the entire state and eventually to the entire country is going to be expensive. And obviously Lancaster County is not going to fund it for the whole state. And we understand that the people who are going to fund it are not going to give us a giant bucket full of money based simply on stories. So we partnered with the Pollock Center and with E-Town College to do that academic research, so that we have the ability to call it an evidence-based program, and therefore meet the requirements to get those larger pots of funding, so that we can expand this to the rest of the state. So I know you're sitting there thinking, it's been almost 40 minutes. Does this actually work? We actually had our first call 2 weeks before the official launch of the program in the middle of December of 2018. Like I said, we started with the 2 police departments, E-Town and Northwest Regional. We trained all of the officers over a 3-day period. At the end of that 3rd day of training, we had one of the officers from Northwest Regional was working his midnight shift, and 2 o'clock in the morning, he came across a woman who was highly intoxicated and causing problems out in public. So since he had just been to training that morning, he said to himself, well, let me give it a try. Let me see if this actually works. In the middle of the night, he called Chris, because at that point, Chris was the only CRS that we had. He called Chris, got Chris to come out. We got someone there, and we were able to get that woman into treatment right then for her alcoholism. She had a serious alcohol problem. It ended up, we found out later that this lady was a nurse, and had we arrested her for public intox and disorderly conduct, and the fact that in her drunken state, she actually took a swing at the police officer. Luckily, she didn't hit him, but she took a swing at him. If we had put all those charges on her, she definitely would have lost her nursing license, would have lost her job, and would have become, her problems would have gotten considerably worse. We actually still interact with that lady. She is still now sober, 3 years plus later, and still doing a great job. Since we started in January of 19, Second Chance has enrolled over 340 people in treatment, coming from those 20-some police departments in Lancaster County. At this time, doing our regular stats keeping, our enrollees are over 75% engaged at the 90-day point of treatment. So we're keeping them involved, we're keeping them engaged. And of the people that stay engaged past the 90-day point, we're at almost 95% that are still engaged in long-term treatment. So we get those, once we get the folks past the 90-day point, we almost keep everybody into long-term treatment. Beyond that, you look at our 75% number, the general success rate for just the 28-day rehab and then go on your way is somewhere between 1% and 3%. So, we're running at 75% because we're able to follow that continuum of care. We're able to get people when they need us the most and get them the help that they need. And even past the 90-day point, a significant number are still engaged. And a couple of success stories that we have one guy, I'll just call him DW. We had a CRS working with us at a sobriety checkpoint. This young gentleman came in as the passenger in a car. He was so high on meth that he couldn't stand still even for 5 seconds. We got him connected with the program, ended up it took about a week to get him into treatment, to get him to finally agree to go to treatment. He is now 2 years clean. He has purchased his own house. He has a full-time job. He's getting married. He has a baby, and he is a productive member of society who walks around singing the praises of Second Chance anywhere he goes. Another success story we have is a guy named Mark. The West Lampeter Police Department helped Mark, got him in touch with Second Chance, got him the treatment that he needs. He's now over a year clean, and he has made it so good that he actually now works for Second Chance. He got that CRS certification, and he now works as one of the CRS responders for Second Chance, helping us to save other people's lives. And then another success story or a pat ourselves on the back kind of thing is knowing that we need to publicize this and we need to get the word out. We actually shot a documentary. Chris was able to work with somebody that he knows through his network and shoot a documentary about the birth and the operation and the successes of the Second Chance program. From what I understand, that's been picked up. That documentary has been picked up by a distributor, and hopefully I'll be able to get Erica to send out a link to the trailer within the next week or two, and then let everybody know once that documentary, from what I understand, the documentary is up for a few awards because they did a good job of shooting it. But we're doing everything that we can, like I said earlier, to get the word out, to publicize this program, because all I want to do is save another life, make another connection, and save another life. So with that, I'll wrap it up and say thank you for spending your time with me. You see my name there, Chief Ed Cunningham. That is my work email address. My wife yells at me because I answer that those emails way too fast and way too often. And then there is the Facebook page for the Second Chance program. Anytime we get any kind of news coverage, anytime we have a success story or anything that we do, we make sure that we put it up on Facebook to get the word out. So with that, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Ed. That was great and super informative. As I'm sure you can imagine, you're very popular. We have quite a few questions to go through here. So in the interest of time, I'll start down through these. So Rachel asks, the individual doesn't need to be involved, doesn't need to be just as involved to participate in the program.
That's correct. We can, as I mentioned, each one of the police stations is a safe space. So if a person knows that they need help, they can just walk into the police station and say, here's my last needle. Please just call and get me help. We can do it that way. Or we often, probably at least once or twice a month, I hear from a mother or a father or a husband or a wife who says, hey, I have a loved one who needs a problem, who has a problem. Can you help us? A family member can also call Second Chance and make the connection that way.
Great, thank you. Next question is from Loretta. She asks, can the police officer file charges at a later date if the person doesn't stay in treatment?
Yes, generally we have up to 2 years to file charges on the drug-related things. So yes, if a person goes in and then absconds or just is trying to fool us, then yes, the officer can file the charges at a later date. But we also train the officers and have in the policy the fact that recovery is hard. So sometimes a person might have a relapse, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to come back and hit them with the hammer. We work with the CRS, we work with the therapists to see, does this person just need a little bit more help?
Great, thank you. So the next question is from Ellen. She wants to know if the CRSs, I'm sure she means Blueprints for Addiction Recovery, partner with local providers in the immediate area. So I'm not sure, Ed, if you have too much experience with how the CRS is working with Chris and Ben, or how do they connect with local providers to get people into treatment?
Well, the CRSs actually work for Second Chance. So Blueprints is just one of the providers that they use, but they actually have a nationwide network. They do have a nationwide network, but really within the tri-state area, they have a very strong network of providers. And following along the appropriateness of care and the continuum of care, the CRS will connect the individual with whatever is most appropriate for them. So if this is a person who has a very strong faith background, then they may end up going to a treatment center that is faith-based. If their insurance company, we had one young man that he was on his parents' insurance. The insurance wanted him to go to a treatment center in Erie, which is about 5.5 hours away. The CRS put him in the car and drove him 5.5 hours to Erie to get him to the one that the insurance company would pay for. So yes, Blueprints is one of the providers, but this isn't a funnel into Blueprints. Blueprints actually only gets maybe about 5% of all of the referrals, and most of those are the ones that they can't find anything else appropriate. So Blueprints will take them to make sure that they get the help.
Great, thank you. Next question here, how can we support the development of this program in our own communities? The person mentioned they're from Berks County.
Like I said, we actually do have we've had meetings with Berks County, and the name of the group is escaping me right now, but we are working to go over there. What I would say is, if you want to bring something like Second Chance to your community, talk to your district attorney's office, talk to your police chief, and have them call me, or have them send me an email, and have them get in touch with me, and we will start, because we are ready. We're poised and ready to start expanding. We just need to find friendly faces who will help us make the push to get into the communities.
Great, thanks, Ed. Next question here. A survey of law enforcement officers found that 90% were worried about exposure to fentanyl, which has been exacerbated by the media and other hysteria that overdose can occur just by touching the drug, which is a myth. The fear has contributed to felony assault charges. The example they provided, 25-year-old man spent 6 years in prison for assault and drug charges when the powder got on the shirt of a police officer. How is this being addressed in Pennsylvania and in the Second Chance program as it continues to evolve?
As part of the training, we do address the we do address some of the myths about coming in contact with substances and coming into contact with people who are using those substances. But a big part of that is in doing that training and smashing the stigma. Part of what we're doing is stopping the officers from overreacting to instances like getting some powder on the shirt. Now, again, like I said about the police groups, I haven't seen the article that they're talking about, and I don't know the incident that they're talking about. So I don't want to comment on that particular arrest and conviction because I don't know all of the circumstances. But when police officers are looking at individuals with substance use disorder as a person, they're less likely to overreact to getting something on them. The other thing is just simply through training, all of the police chiefs in Lancaster County are working very hard to bust the myths of the exposure risks and trying to get our officers to just be safe when they're handling any kind of substance, whether it's drugs or weapons or whatever. We're just training them to be safe whenever they're touching anything.
This question says, is this something that could be used outside of police departments eventually? I work at a transitional program for people returning to the community from incarceration. If someone brings substances into the program, they're often discharged to homelessness. Could this program be used as a support in this scenario?
Yes, absolutely. What I would say is whoever asked that question, shoot me an email so I can figure out, I can work with Chris and Ben and we can figure out a way to expand it to something like that. But I know that's one of the points of us working with probation and parole. One of, most probation violations and parole violations are related to substance use. And, so and the probation officers and the parole officers, they don't want to send these folks back to jail, but that's the only response that they have. So we're working with them so that they can call a CRS. And one of the things that we talked about and we're still trying to work out is maybe even putting a CRS stationed right in the probation office so that we have somebody there all the time that can immediately respond to those kind of situations. So yes, it's absolutely something that we could work out. And, if they want to, they can get together with me offline and we can figure out the details.
Perfect. Ed, remind me again, someone asked for your email address in the chat. I can just pop it in there. It's Cunningham at etownpolice.org.
Correct, yes.
I'll put that in there again. That's all we have time for today. We're already up at the hour. If anybody has any questions that we were unable to address today, please feel free to reach out to myself or Ed for any questions. And Ed, thank you so much for your presentation. It was super informative and looking forward to working with you and hearing about the program in the future. As a quick reminder for everybody on the call before we close out today, I'm going to drop a link to a survey in the chat. You will also be directed to this link when you close out of Zoom. This is a survey to let us know how we're doing on the webinars and provide any feedback on Ed's presentation or anything else you'd like him to know, or the webinars in general. So please make sure you take the time to do that today, just so we have that feedback to know how to better serve you in the future. Thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.